News media's role in terrorism, the facilitation of fear. Norway attacks, July 2011.
Good evening. I'm Sandra Sanchez reporting live from the University of Michigan. In tonight's segment, we will be focusing on terrorism and specifically the 2011 attacks in Norway. But before we begin, I will be answering a question you're all probably wondering. What is terrorism anyway? Terrorism. It's a word we hear often, from policymakers to news organizations. But do we really understand what it means?
The American Heritage New Dictionary of Cultural Literacy defines terrorism as the use of violence and threats to intimidate or coerce, especially for political purposes. According to the U.S. State Department, terrorism is premeditated, politically motivated violence perpetrated against non-combatant targets by subnational groups of clandestine agents, usually intended to influence an audience. According to the United Kingdom Terrorism Act, terrorism is defined as the use or threat of action designed to influence the government or to intimidate the public or a section of the public, and made for the purpose of advancing a political, religious, or ideological cause.
While these three definitions vary slightly, one common theme remains consistent among them. Terrorism is violence with an objective behind it, to elicit fear and advance a cause. In reality, it is through news media that this objective is carried out. Let me illustrate this for you.
First and foremost, the terrorist or terrorist group completes their usually premeditated act of violence. It is then through the news media, such as television broadcasts, newspaper reports, magazines, radio, internet, and the like, that the message of the violence is communicated to a mass audience and circulated throughout the society. This is where fear surfaces and the public outrage and opinion forms. Such political opinion then puts pressure on the government and policymakers to respond to the violence, thus carrying out the terrorist objective.
As you can see, the news media is an essential vehicle through which the violence is propagated to the public, to then create a fear and then yield a reaction. In essence, the media facilitates fear.
In the World News Prism, Challenges of Digital Communication, authors William A. Hockton and James F. Scotton assert that in the ongoing concern about terrorism, global news media have played a major role in both informing the world and in organizing and facilitating responses to terrorism. The media are an unwilling accomplice of terrorism by publicizing the atrocities and carrying the email messages of terrorists. This idea is also reflected in a publication entitled Terrorism in the Media, published as part of a research project aimed to help Europe better understand terrorism called Transnational Terrorism, Security and the Rule of Law, or TTSRL. They state that in order to spread fear and thus advance its political goals, a terrorist organization needs the media. In most cases, terrorist attacks are very localized and affect only a few people. The goal, however, is to spread the message to more people than just those who are directly hit by the attack. The TTSRL even goes as far as saying that a symbiotic relationship exists between terrorism and the media. In a publication entitled Framing, Agenda Setting, and Priming, The Evolution of Three Media Effects Models, Dietram A. Schufel describes agenda setting, the theory that the more attention a media outlet pays to a certain phenomenon, the more importance the public attributes to such an issue. This graph, published by the TTSRL, demonstrates the existence of agenda setting. As you can see, the more attention the media play to terrorist activity, the higher the perceived threat by audiences. Although this particular study was done in Sweden, the TTSRL shows studies exhibiting similar patterns in other European Union countries, and it can be assumed that it occurs likewise in other countries where mass media is wide-reaching.